It's interesting that the Indy 500 decided to do what the WNBA refuses to do, and that's make Caitlin Clark the face of their organization. So you may have seen the other day that the WNBA were promoting, I guess, a triple header, a bunch of games.
They didn't use it.
And when it came to the Indiana Fever game, they chose a player averaging 1 point a game, and not Caitlin Clark, who's averaging like 28 points a game.
Or Leah Boston, former first overall pick.
They decided to stab her in the back again.
Damn.
Caitlin Clark just rolled up to the Indy 500 and shut the whole racetrack down. Not a single car moved. The crowd lost their minds. Grown men were screaming, and the internet is still recovering. Was it the anthem? A half-court shot? Or did she just casually drop the greatest sports moment of the year? You're not gonna believe what happened next.
Now, despite there not being any basketball going on, Caitlin Clark has found her way back in the media. Today, she is at the Indy 500 to be the Grand Marshal. And you know Caitlin Clark came out in a grand style, man. Thousands of fans literally is at the Indy 500, and Caitlin Clark shut the place down. Now, videos is starting to come out online, pictures, and we finna react to it all. Our girl Caitlin Clark put on a spectacular performance last time she played.
Did you know that one basketball player can walk into the most famous race in America and become louder than 33 engines firing at once? That is essentially what happened when Caitlin Clark arrived at the Indianapolis 500, and the event suddenly transformed into a racetrack with a side of complete fan hysteria.
They hate Caitlin Clark.
Yeah,
the Indy 500 came out and said, "We'd like you to be our Grand Marshal." So Caitlin Clark can be the face of the Indy 500, but cannot be the face of the WNBA. Make that make sense.
I'll tell you how it makes sense.
Oh, that's right. They hate her maybe because she's, I don't know, a straight white woman?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
That's not why.
Is that possible?
Paige Beckers is a better player. Here's why.
Is that possible?
She's not complaining to the refs nonstop with them.
She stepped into that role with the kind of casual swagger that makes it clear this woman is no longer just playing basketball. She has become a full-blown cultural force that institutions are smart enough to harness before someone else does.
She was 22, 2-9, man. Just a lit weekend for Caitlin Clark. Now, we do know her parents. It was rumored that her parents, her aunts and uncles, and everybody came in from out of town for this moment. There was Caitlin with thousands of fans at the Indy 500.
Hey, it's Caitlin. I'm here at the Indy 500. All my friends. Excited to be here. First time.
So this is her first time there. And yeah, man, Lexi Hall looked like she came to show support with Caitlin Clark.
The decision to hand her the keys to the Indy 500 was not some random PR stunt cooked up in a boardroom. It was a very deliberate acknowledgement that her pull reaches far beyond the basketball court and into spaces where speed, tradition, and massive crowds collide.
Caitlin Clark out at the Indy 500 today, ladies and gentlemen, looking fresh, looking like the global icon and superstar that she is. You know they've been putting Clark's picture on a lot of the race cars and stuff because she's the most electrifying woman in women's basketball. Dope to see Clark out here having a good time. A certain fan base always talking about Met Gala or who's more marketable.
And boy, did those crowds collide with her presence. The stands did not politely clap like they were attending a symphony. They erupted. Security lines stretched longer than some people's patience during a blowout game. Autograph requests came flying in from every direction, and the sheer volume of phones held up in the air created its own little constellation above the track. None of it felt staged. This was organic chaos, the kind that happens when genuine star power meets an audience starving for something exciting. What makes the whole scene even funnier is how effortlessly she managed to eclipse the actual race before it even started. The internet did what the internet does best, which is lose its mind in real time, clipping every reaction, every roar from the crowd, and every stunned commentator, trying to process the fact that a basketball player just stole the spotlight from one of the most prestigious auto races in the world.
Man, the takeover is underway. Caitlin Clark taking over at the Indy 500. Take a look at this here. A woman of the people See, now I gotta go to an Indy 500 to see what's really going on. I gotta go to one now. Indy 500 and F1 is on my list.
Grown adults were acting as if they had never seen a celebrity before, and in a way they hadn't because Caitlyn operates on a different frequency. She draws people who don't even follow sports. She pulls in families, casual fans, curious newcomers, and lifelong racing diehards who suddenly found themselves chanting her name between engine revs. That, of course, this level of dominance does not go unnoticed by everyone in her orbit, particularly those who have spent the last couple of years watching her ascent with what can only be described as increasingly obvious envy. Angel Reese, for instance, seems to be processing all of this in the most predictable way possible, while Caitlyn is out here shutting down legendary racetracks and turning them into extensions of her personal brand. Angel appears stuck in a loop of side-eye and thinly veiled frustration. Reese's talent, no question, but she lacks the kind of broad, almost ridiculous fan base that treats Caitlyn Clark like a once-in-a-generation phenomenon. Caitlyn's supporters do not just show up, they show out. They fill arenas, they flood social media, they travel across state lines, and they lose their voices screaming. For a woman who plays with a joy and skill set that feels magnetic.
Multiple 20-plus, 30-point games and all these assists leading your team. You can do off-the-court shit like this in the middle of this season, and it's cool because Clark is a hooper, and she can make layups. Yeah, it's great to see Clark out here represent. I think she said this is her first time doing it, but it's great because, like I say, with the NASCAR, the race car shit, they've been putting Clark's picture on some of the cars. That's dope to be represented like that as an athlete, especially for women's sports. Just growing the game, man. We love you, Caitlyn.
Angels fans are loyal, sure, but they do not quite reach that fever pitch where entire events reorganize themselves around one person's presence. That kind of gravitational pull is rare, and watching someone else command it so naturally has to sting when you are busy building your own narrative in the same league. The contrast becomes even sharper when you look at what Caitlyn means for her own team daily. The Indiana Fever have struggled with organizational headaches and inconsistent attendance this season. Yet the moment Caitlyn steps outside basketball into something like the Indy 500, the spotlight follows her like an obedient shadow. She is the engine. With her, they become appointment television. That is an enormous amount of pressure to carry, but Caitlyn handles it with the kind of calm that makes everyone around her look like they are overreacting. Her family showed up, of course, because they always do. They have been there through every stage of this wild ride, providing that steady foundation while the world spins faster around her. Even teammate Lexi Hall made the trip, adding another layer of support that reminds you this phenomenon is still very much a human, surrounded by people who genuinely root for her success.
So, let me start off by saying this. The WNBA is failing Caitlyn Clark. It just is what it is. And if you guys want to sit here, and there's people who are going to come into my comments and say, oh my God, here you are, black woman, caping for this white girl. I am. I'm putting the cape on for her because it...
That's the first thing they say. That's the first thing they say. Oh, well, you're black. Why are you defending her? That's the first thing they always gonna say.
It has to be said, and I have to call it out and call it for what it is. It is starting to become evident. I'm somebody who knows...
Many other rising stars is the cross-demographic appeal that feels almost impossible in today's fragmented world. She is not just popular with basketball fans in the Midwest. She resonates with people who have never watched a WNBA game in their lives, racing enthusiasts who normally couldn't care less about women's basketball suddenly found themselves invested because she was there. Kids, parents, grandparents, men, women, people from completely different political and cultural backgrounds, all united by the simple fact that watching her do anything feels. The hilarious part is how seriously some people are still trying to downplay it. They act like her impact is manufactured or temporary, as if the roaring crowds at the Indy 500 were some kind of mass hallucination. Meanwhile, every metric keeps proving otherwise. Ticket sales, viewership numbers, merchandise movement, and social media engagement all spike when Caitlyn is involved.
All Daytona. is, of course, the Indy 500, and Caitlin Clark was asked to come up there. We got some video, we got some pictures, and all of this is going absolutely crazy online. Let's check this out, her walking in. There she is, walking in right there. No sound. Pretty cool. There's also this entire red carpet situation. Let me just find it here.
The league has spent years trying to crack the code on mainstream relevance, and it turns out the code was a generational talent who passes better than most guards in the men's league, shoots from logo range like it's nothing, and carries herself with zero pretense. She makes the impossible look routine, and that competence paired with charisma is lethal in the attention economy. You have to appreciate the absurdity of the timeline. Too, not long ago, women's basketball was fighting for basic visibility, scraping by with modest crowds and limited broadcast slots. Then, Caitlin Clark enters the picture, drops performances that belong in highlight reels for the next decade, and suddenly every game feels like an event. They were full-throated, delirious celebrations, the kind usually reserved for game-winning shots or dramatic overtime finishes. Instead, they happened because she waved a flag and smiled. That is star power in its purest form. And while Angel Reese continues, navigating her own path, complete with a signature competitive fire that makes her a force on the court. The gap in external frenzy is hard to ignore. Caitlin's fans do not just like her. They are ride or die, ready to turn any venue into a circus tent if she is even remotely nearby.
Orders weren't even allowed in the pit until 1971, and the first woman to qualify happened in 1977. And being the Grand Marshal, the person who tells the drivers to go to their cars, is no small honor either. I mean, some notable ones in the past have been President Gerald Ford, Peyton Manning, even Mickey Mouse a couple times. So that's why today it was very, very cool that Caitlin Clark became the second Indiana Fever player in history to be the Grand Marshal at the Indy 500, joining the absolute legend that is Tamika Catchings. I love seeing this happen today, and learning the history of this moment made it feel even more significant.
That energy is intoxicating, and it is difficult to replicate. Reese builds her brand on toughness and flair, which works for her core audience, but it is not